be here today with you, although not in presence because we couldn't be in Sardinia today, but still we would like to thank the organizers very much for this opportunity of sharing our research with participants of the conference. My name is Ivona Ganko, and I'm a labor market expert at the European Training Foundation, and I'm here today with my colleague and partner in crime.
Good morning, my name is Eva Jansova and I'm the Human Capital Development Expert at the European Training Foundation. So we both with Ivona, we represent this agency. It's the EU agency that is active in the area of human capital development and works primarily with the countries that are the neighbors of the EU.
So let's now go to the core of our research, and we will be very happy to share with you our presentation right now. We are very happy to present to you today our research, which was summarized in one of the articles of this year's anthology on business models powered by artificial intelligence on the example of platform work in the EU neighborhood. We wish to underline, though, that the research has been a joint work with experts from the countries involved, as well as with the colleagues from PPMI from Lithuania, who supported our work with their knowledge and previous experiences. Research focused so far on 12 countries, 6 countries from the Eastern Partnership region between October 2020 and May 2021, and 6 countries from the Western Balkans between October 2021 and May 2022. We are currently finalizing the regional report for the Western Balkans, which should be published shortly on ETF website. A quick look on the methodology. We used a mixed method approach with desk research and interview program, both country-specific and region-wide. We analyzed quantitative and qualitative data, specifically related to labor market indicators with legislation, data on atypical employment, but also level of digitalization, like, for example, internet penetration, digital skills levels. We also had a quite wide look on policy frameworks and strategic approaches towards digital transition. All these we triangulated with the insights of interviewees from the interview program. However, the core of the methodology is big data analytics, which we did through automated data collection and analysis, thanks to support of our PPMI colleagues, where we scraped the webs of global freelancing platforms which are present both in Eastern Partnership countries and in the Western Balkans. We looked at those that are most present at Guru, Weblancer, Freelancer, People Per Hour, Half-Staff Talent. Unfortunately, Upwork could not be exceeded due to the block that the platform is currently doing for the data collection. With this, we analyzed the data, coding the new variables for activity, gender, and occupation. And here again, we triangulated with other web scrape data sources, specifically from Online Labor Index of the iLabor project of the Oxford Internet Institute, but also from our friends from Public Policy Research Center from Serbia, GigMeter. While starting our research, we had to establish a conceptual framework. Within this, we identified 2 types of digital marketplaces. The first one relates to digital capital platforms, which connect customers with service providers. Those service providers can, for example, lend money, lease assets, or sell goods. And those are, for example, Airbnb, Etsy, Amazon, or eBay. The second one that was of our interest are digital labor platforms. They are connecting customers with professionals. Those professionals can be freelancers or contingent workers who carry out specific projects or assignments. And those platforms are known like Upwork, TaskRabbit, Freelancer, Deliveroo, Uber. We look at the digital labor platforms and platform work as a new form of employment. We looked at it from a perspective a bit wider of global trends and the shift towards digitalization, information society, as well as flexible labor relations, for example, remote employment or remote learning opportunities. While we were also observing a quite substantial shift away from traditional workplaces and work patterns, full-time work contracts, or one-to-one relationships between employers and employees. What are we actually talking about while we're referring to platform work? So here we tend to use the European Commission DG employment definition, which states that it's all labor provided through or all mediated by online platforms. It can cover different range of sectors. The work can be provided in varied forms, but what is very important that the work is provided in exchange for payment. There are also some features that they describe platform work. Basically, it must take place on digital labor platform, which we already said that are digital marketplaces for different types of work. Then, there might be at least 3 parties involved: online platform, worker, and client. And what is very, very important is the third feature, that matching of workers and clients is digitally mediated and administered. Here, algorithmic management can be of different degrees, but it always appears. We obviously wanted to look deeper into digital labor markets, but as already said, they are very diverse and very complex. But for the purpose of the research, we looked at 2 types of those digital labor markets. First one, we refer to as remote services. What does it mean? It means that we deal with remote delivery of electronically transmittable services via, for example, freelance marketplaces. And the second one we refer as on-location services. It means that the delivery of services is physical, but here always matching and administration of those services between clients and service providers are always digital, through, for example, mobile apps. We were observing platform work also from the prism of algorithmic management. And what we found out is when we deal with higher complexity work, like for example remote service provision, we also observe lower algorithmic management, meaning that workers have much more autonomy in their work performance. However, when we deal with lower complexity of tasks, we also observe higher algorithmic management. It means that here workers have lower autonomy in their work performance. What is actually the role of algorithms in platform work? First, and seen as the most important, is matching customers with workers. So here, algorithms take the role of the efficient matching between supply and demand of labor. They also establish trust between market players, and this is seen as the most important factor for such a growth in popularity. The second very important feature is monitoring and management of performance of workers. Here different technological tools can be used, but they are always facilitated by artificial intelligence, and they can remotely manage workers. This function relies very often also on automated decision-making system. And those are based on real-time data for performance rating, also control and monitoring of workers' behavior. And the third feature is very much linked with the second one. So algorithms are evaluating workers and controlling them. So clients' ratings and control system are the key for then further allocation of tasks for workers. Unfortunately, an algorithm can also exclude workers from their future jobs or totally from a platform without any engagement of a human being, as workers generally have very little options to contest the performance assessment by algorithms.
Participation in platform work differs among countries, yet the patterns in terms of the characteristics of platform workers is similar across the countries in the neighborhood and also resemble to the patterns seen in the EU countries. So first of all, typically we see younger workers among the platform workers. In case of remote platforms, we see typically the age group between 25 and 35 years of age, and it's also similar in case of on-location platforms, it's 25 to 40 years of age. What is important to mention here that the data collected are not comprehensive. Of course, information is missing, and here the information on remote platforms refer to the information gathered through selected remote platforms, while interviews and desk research was used in case of the on-location platforms and getting information about the workers on this type of platforms. When it comes to gender, we see the majority of workers are males. It's about 60 to 70% in case of remote platforms, and it's even more pronounced in case of on-location platforms. When it comes to education, given the type of services requested on the remote platforms, typically we see people with mostly tertiary or more specialized education. In case of on-location platforms, a higher education is not needed, yet from the collected evidence, we see that even on-location platform workers have secondary or higher education. What attracts, of course, the platform workers to the platforms is the pay, which is usually better than if compared to the salaries in the traditional economy. On the other hand, when it comes to the contract, we see that platform workers, both on remote platforms but also on on-location platforms, are typically self-employed, are entrepreneurs, which also means that the issue of informality is present, and such workers found themselves typically in this gray area. When it comes to skills development, what we can point out that in case of remote platform workers, such workers need to be or are usually equipped with digital language and other soft skills such as communications, presentation, and so on. In case of on-location platform workers, typically the work is unskilled, so such type of work needs only basic skills. When it comes to skills development opportunities, it's typically an individual decision whether to invest in further skills development. Platforms typically don't provide opportunities or don't support opportunities or trainings for the workers. To demonstrate some of the patterns observed, we see here the distribution of platform workers, of remote platform workers by sex. So we see clearly that there is a disbalance. So we can find more males among platform workers than females. In some countries, this is more pronounced than in the others. So in general, the share of females is higher in the countries of Western Balkans than is the case of the countries of Eastern Partnership. This points to the difficulties of women to access but also to perform successfully on the platforms, and this also resembles to the typical situation that we can find on the standard labor market. So what are the trends among remote platform workers in the EU neighborhood? So first of all, we see that remote workers from these countries usually work on global platforms. So it's the platforms such as Freelancer, Weblancer, Guru, Upwork. We can also see that the number of workers in these two regions has increased since 2017, which can be demonstrated by different information sources. Something that I already pointed out before is that there is a high demand for occupation or high-skilled occupation, mainly in the ICT sector and creative industries, which of course means that there is a request for high-skilled and highly educated workers. When it comes to countries, we see that in case of Western Balkans, Serbia is clearly the leader when it comes to the numbers of freelancers engaged in remote platform work, but it's also North Macedonia when it comes, for example, to the number of workers per capita that are engaged in such type of jobs. In case of Eastern Partnership, until the war, it was Ukraine and Belarus who were the leaders, followed by Armenia, and of course the current conflict will also influence dominant position of these two countries when it comes to the remote platform work. Underlying factor that we would like to stress here, that the potential of platform work and also the level of participation in platform work and remote platform work in particular is also dependent on the digital infrastructure and the access to internet, which is still limited in some countries, more in the countries of Eastern Partnership than in the countries of Western Balkan, and this is clearly an area where investment is needed. From the remote platform work, what are the trends that we can see in case of on-location platform work? So here the picture is mixed. While in the Western Balkan economies, we see that the on-location market is dominated by domestic platforms. This was not the case in Eastern Partnership region before the war, where international platforms were much more present. On-location work, of course, gained prominence, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we don't know how many workers are actually engaged on on-location platforms, given the limited access to the information. What we can say, however, is that on-location work is less pronounced and developed compared to remote work, which is contrary to the situation that we see in the EU. When it comes to skills, we see the majority of jobs are low-skilled. It's about the delivery, ride-hailing through mobile apps, which clearly points to different patterns in terms of labor demand in comparison to the remote platform work. What are the challenges and opportunities of platform work? Platform work can bring new employment opportunities and access to highly paid international jobs. It also provides platform workers with flexible work arrangements and can be seen also as an entry point for graduates on the labor market. This means that it can contribute to the reduction of unemployment and can be also seen as alternative to migration and brain drain, which is something important for the countries of the EU neighborhood. On the other hand, there is an issue of informality, so undeclared work, tax evasion, but also lack of social protection and labor rights of platform workers. We can also observe limited skill development opportunities, as well as opportunities for certification and validation of developed skills. Final element that I would like to mention is the lack of inclusiveness and replication of discrimination or unequal access to the labor market as can be observed on the standard labor market. This means, for example, limited access and also success on the platforms that we can see among population groups such as Finally, to benefit from platform work, countries need to support the digital infrastructure as well as digital literacy and population. And something that is very important is that there needs to be an acknowledgement of these new forms of employment in the existing regulation and policies.
Looking from the prism of challenges and opportunities, we had a very broad reflection on policies which could foster opportunities while mitigating challenges. Together with our stakeholders, colleagues, other experts, we identified 4 policy dimensions. The first one relates to digitalization and technology, as access to digital infrastructure is seen as a precondition for further growth of the opportunities, especially in platform economy. The second one relates to labor market and establishing fair conditions for both platforms and workers. The third one relates to education and training, as there is a very strong skills dimension in terms of skills development and skills needs for the new jobs. And the fourth relates to evidence for policy making. As already said, there is no yet established systematic data collection or systematic analysis which could inform policymakers. Training Foundation works primarily in the area of skills development. We had an in-depth reflection on the implications for education and training. Here, we came to the conclusion that developing key competences in formal education and training, digital skills, languages, communication, learning to learn, and entrepreneurial skills are really key to catch up new job opportunities. Then, supporting career management and providing counseling is also very important. This may happen also through public employment services. Continuing education and training, meaning lifelong learning, is as well very important, as jobs are changing, and especially those in the new forms of work like platform work. Here, formal, non-formal, and informal continued training will be very important. And last but not least, actually identified by our stakeholders, including those working on the platforms, as the most important: portability of work experience and skills which are gained on the job. Simply by recognizing those that are acquired in new forms of employment and platform work. So here, skills recognition, validation, and certification would be very important. Please let us briefly conclude with our reflections on all the work that has been done so far. So what we see, and it's very important for our partner countries neighboring the European Union, is that better paid jobs on online platforms could actually potentially reduce the incentives for economic outward migration. With these, it could decrease the brain drain, especially of young people. but definitely it can only happen if supported by effective policies. The second reflection we had is related to developments at the EU level, especially on the new directive on improving working conditions in platform work, which is expected to be approved maybe already in 2022. This directive could mostly set the framework also for regulating platform work in the EU neighboring countries, also looking from the prism of ILO decent work principles. But to fully understand the consequences of the new emerging phenomenon and the impact, a still further investigation is needed. And what is very important, that somehow a more systematic data collection is established.
Please consult the following publication that can be found on the website of the European Training Foundation. And for any further comments, questions, you can of course contact us on the following addresses. Thank you for your attention.